matters. Welcome back, my good friend. It is great to see you, and I certainly, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate you making the trip in. So much nicer being able to talk to somebody, looking at them in the eyeballs.
I agree. I enjoy these hours, Brian.
I know you do. I know you speak with honesty on that. Maybe that's why you keep coming back. So we get all the time in the world to dive on into these issues a little more in depth than really you can get, like even with a Fox News interview, because I'm not necessarily bound by the time constraints that most are.
This is nice not to just try to get everything compacted into 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm willing to go over and past my time as long as we get to where we need to be. You heard Dave. Every week we always have a conversation off air. Oh my God, the guy's scary and he's got great information. And I agree. You heard about TikTok and Chinese backdoor and everything. And, I guess the silence on this issue from the administration, for example, is deafening. I mean, the administration has subtly and behind the scenes and maybe a little bit projected in the media, said, all right, no more government use of TikTok, but not in an out loud, we have to stop using, like red flag waving, God bless America. We need to get rid of this. This is dangerous for our country. It's dangerous for the future of America. It's vital to our nation's security and your own personal security to quit using this damn program. Nothing.
And how about, and here's why.
That's where I was hoping you would go.
Yeah, well, we can talk about some of those things, what they're able to do with the powerful voice that they have and the information they can gather about Americans down to individuals. It's not just patterns within America, but it's individuals and how they try and move people towards certain behavior. One of the saddest things that I've seen in the last few months, and there's been plenty of sad things that I've seen, is this young boy right here in the 2nd District of Ohio who took the Benadryl challenge promoted by TikTok and lost his life.
Yeah.
This is something, it'll be fun. You'll hallucinate and blah, blah, blah. Well, we've lost this young man, and I think he did it innocently, thinking, if it's on TikTok, it must be safe. How do they allow something like that? How can something like that ever be put out and then no liability? That's the thing.
Of course,
there ends up being no liability that we can see of, and maybe there is someone that can sue TikTok over this, but it seems like nothing happens. Now I see TV commercials. And I don't watch that much TV,
right,
except lately Reds games. But they're running these ads for TikTok, and they're using military members, U.S. military members, and veterans to say TikTok is great. I use it to reach back home to talk to people. This is how I communicate. Listen, we got much better ways of communicating than we have with TikTok.
Yeah, you don't need TikTok to communicate. I just don't. What really, it shocks me like anything. I don't know, how did Facebook, blow away all the other social media sites, at least for a while, until it was substituted by something else? How is it that Twitter became the ultimate default mechanism for everyone to, tweet and communicate that way? Now, of course, you got some competition out there now, but what the hell is with TikTok? I mean, the entire world is on that program, and that is crazy scary considering the data that they're vacuuming up.
Yeah, it is interesting. And let's go to the very premise. Who owns TikTok?
The Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, it's not the United States. It's not an American. It's not a domestic product. That's a problem. So it's easy for the federal government to say, we're not, we can't use TikTok anymore. You think so? I mean, you can't even, soldiers can't even purchase non-domestic running shoes. So, but we had TikTok being used by our federal government. It's disturbing in many ways, but maybe the Supreme Court is going to help with us on some of the federal interactions with social media. What do you think, Brian?
I don't know, because if you believe what so many people believe, that maybe Joe Biden is compromised as a consequence of either his son's business dealings, his own personal gains from the various business dealings, the 10% to the big guy, all these LLCs, 20, 30 of them that they've uncovered so far, the paper trail, the flags that banks threw on suspicious activity reports, and there are gobs of them. Could be. I think it's reasonable to conclude, not a conspiracy theorist guy am I, that maybe some of Biden's policy positions toward China have something to do with the fact that they got the goods on him.
Or how about the Hunter Biden alleged chat that says, you don't pay me by this evening? I got my dad sitting right here. Those things seem to be verifiable.
They do.
And so this is a concern. The Supreme Court ruling on the social media interaction with the government, I think, is a good first step.
Well, it was a U.S. District Court. We haven't gotten to the Supreme on that.
You're right. Sorry about that.
It is an amazing, amazing decision. The injunction, and I like to emphasize, for folks who aren't lawyers, you getting an injunction is a preliminary stage. There's been no trial yet, but this judge has put in place an injunction preventing the federal government from the vast majority of the interference it was engaged in suppressing our free speech. Our free speech. Nobody's suppressed what Joe Biden utters or Jean Cream Pierre, the referrals back to other departments. That's her default answer for everything. Nobody's suppressing that or asking to. What they have done, the government and this particular administration, has stopped us from speaking through their interactions with social media, and that's what the judge says. You can't do it anymore. And the Biden administration just went into court yesterday saying it is going to suffer irreparably if this injunction is left in place until after the trial. And I'm thinking to myself, what possible interest is being harmed here by the government, stopping the government from stifling what you and I say?
Who is going to be harmed? The American people?
That's what the judge said when he put the injunction in.
Yeah, the American people are being harmed. And then maybe they're making the case that their administration or their party may be harmed. I guess that's what they're trying to say, because that seems to be where it's headed anyway, and with that type of a conversation. You're the lawyer. You tell me.
Listen, I'm appalled that this has gone on. I am upset with my government. I mean, I love the United Wanes every day. But like the McCarthy era, an era that I'm not proud of either in our nation's history, or in turning the Japanese, just because we were at war with Japan and we had interned Japanese citizens, United States citizens, not a happy chapter in the nation's history. Slavery. We can point to all these different things that we find at fault. We're living one of those times right now. Our government suppressing our speech, our government trying to manipulate the messaging on COVID, on masks, on the situation in Ukraine, on the situation in China, Taiwan, all these different topics. We are only getting, because of their direct involvement with social media, their version of what's going on.
Yeah, and this current generation of Americans, and you refer to a lot of things historically, this current generation of Americans has got to decide if they're going to let all this happen on their watch. Is this the legacy of this generation? Is, government corruption, and we've allowed it. I mean, I do think of myself as a teenager watching Watergate. You had Republicans and Democrats that just wanted to get to the truth. And it was a Republican that went to President Nixon and said, you need to resign. We are far from that today.
Yes, we are. The division in this country. And again, you can point to social media for that. They foment division. And it's easy for very, very, very small numbers of people or individuals to manipulate folks through, bot farms, artificial intelligence generated messaging that makes their volume look that much larger. Like, I think statistically speaking, I think of the transgender quote unquote movement that we're facing here. I mean, statistically, the numbers are very low. Like, they're up 1% of the entire United States population. Yet the volume of outcry that it comes across on social media, you would think that every single man, woman, and child in your neighborhood fell within this very small slice of the letter salad that we're dealing with every day. No, it's like 1% of the population considers themselves a sex other than they really are. Why the volume? Well, social media amplifies it, and at the same time, other powers that be can suppress alternative, what I would think, more traditional value and views on that subject. Let's continue with Congressman Wenstrup. We're going to have the IRS whistleblowers to talk about. He wrote an op-ed in Dependence Day, because we are dependent, among others. More with Congressman Wenstrup. Got a full hour here, and get some motor exit. Won't get rid of the stench of politics or the conversations we're having. Run them in for a full hour in studio. Sherry Poland from the Hamilton County Board of Elections at 8:05. They need workers for the special election coming up. And we'll hear from retired Senior Master Sergeant Israel D.T. Del Toro with his book, A Patriot's Promise. That'll come up at 8:30. In the meantime, got to dive on into the IRS whistleblower situation here, Congressman Wenstrup. More information we find out, the worse it looks for Hunter Biden, and the more information on his laptop gets corroborated with all these whistleblowers and other people who've actually testified. How soon are we to some sort of investigatory conclusion? Can we talk about that yet? Give me the laydown and let my listeners know as well.
Yeah, the whistleblowers are the key to all of this, as one might expect. These are whistleblowers from the IRS, long-term agents that investigate fraud in other areas. And they came across some of Hunter Biden's things while investigating another issue. As they tried to work what they had found in Hunter Biden's returns, they found that they were stonewalled. So let me just start with the crimes that are at issue here. They include attempt to evade or defeat paying your taxes. Right. That's a felony. Fraud and false statements. That's a felony. Willful failure to file returns, supply information, and pay tax. That's a misdemeanor. So go to where we are today. All they're really charging him with in this supposed plea deal is the misdemeanor.
Right.
And I guess everything else just gets brushed aside.
Well, you didn't mention failure to register as a foreign agent.
There's that one, too.
Yeah, that's a rather large and substantial issue as well.
So, we've got all these charges against him, but let me take you through what the whistleblowers went through, okay? So they discover some of these things, and they go through their chain of command. And one of the comments that they make, and I'm paraphrasing, is, normally we would have been charging right ahead, getting subpoenas, doing investigations on our own, which they are authorized to do.
Certainly.
But as they went up their chain of command said, let's turn this over to the Department of Justice. Okay? Now it goes over to the Department of Justice. And Merrick Garland has said that
effectively they took these IRS agents off the case.
They basically took the investigation out of the IRS and handed it over to the Department of Justice.
Is there precedent for doing that?
That I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think it's standard, obviously,
Clearly.
because the whistleblowers were pretty miffed by that. But I can understand where things at the IRS may end up with the Department of Justice, but just to hand it over and basically neuter the investigation is what it seems to have happened here.
Right. In the normal thought process or next step, if the Department of Justice took it over, then they would be doing all the follow-up that wasn't yet done by these IRS agents. They'd be interviewing people, they'd be calling them in, handing out subpoenas,
right,
and doing more criminal investigation.
So now it's in the hands of a prosecutor at DOJ, right?
Yeah.
Merrick Garland says that Mr. Weiss is in charge of this. He said Weiss has the authority to bring charges and do whatever he wants. Well, the whistleblower is saying that Weiss told the prosecution team he had referred charges to the U.S. attorney in D.C. around March of 2022. Right. But U.S. attorney declined to bring charges in D.C. Then Weiss told the team he's not the deciding person on whether
after
charges
saying
are filed.
definitively he had all the authority to pursue this, he then backpedaled and said, "No, I'm not the guy."
No. He what he's saying is he's not the guy who decides to prosecute. He brings the case as prosecutor to the attorney, U.S. attorney in D.C. They say no. We're not going to do it. This is according to Weiss. And so then he sought a special counsel status from DOJ in the spring of 22. So turned down in D.C. By the U.S. attorney in March of 22. So he asked for special counsel status from the DOJ in the spring of 2022, and he is denied. Then he brought charges in the Central District of California in the fall of 22, and that was denied. This is all, as reported and through the whistleblowers. All of those people that did the denying were appointed by the Biden administration, we are told.
Yeah.
Okay. So you now have this situation. Again, it's more and more buried. Now, the Attorney General has said that Weiss has the full authority to go ahead and prosecute. So something's not adding up.
Exactly.
Here. Something's not adding up here. Someone seems to be not telling the truth, if you will. So let's figure this one out. It's just unbelievable. You get these investigations denied, you get prosecutions denied. Obviously, we have a two-tiered system of justice.
Well, clearly that, but you also have the slow walking of the investigation such that it seemingly intentionally ran out the statute of limitations on some of the worst charges, which were the 2014-15 related areas. That's when he was getting the millions and millions of dollars through these various LLCs from the Chinese Communist Party. I mean, the statute of limitations goes by, and that's where the foreign relations or registering as a foreign agent charges would have come in at that same time frame. I don't know if there's a statute of limitations on charges related to failure to register as a foreign agent, but no one seems to have answered that, and they didn't seem real interested in pursuing the deep dive on those cash payment or those payments anyway.
Right. The statute of limitations is the other thing that's disturbing because these charges go back to 2014, 2014 through 2019, and then if you wait and you wait and you wait. Frankly, I don't understand why not paying your taxes, especially if it's intentional, has a statute of limitations on it.
It's a good question. Fraud is a longer statute of limitations than just mere inadvertence or negligence. So if you miscalculate your taxes and you don't do it intentionally or fraudulently, then after a period of like a few years, that's why you don't have to keep your tax records over a certain period of time. But fraud, I think, goes back like 7 years. So that gives the IRS longer time to go after you. Let's pause. We'll continue because we can't be done with that one. More with Congressman Brad Wenstrup. After I mentioned Accent, which is the coolest company for handcrafted works and beautiful ones of stone, glass, and metal, just rely on Accent as so many relates to Hunter Biden. I mean, they're not done with this. The committee is continuing to call in witnesses, subpoena documents and records. We're going to get a clearer picture of this. I mean, I'd like to see someone develop a timeline and show the very, like a giant chart with all these LLCs and the paper trail of, again, the bank flagged suspicious activity reports. Dude, if you or I had suspicious activity reports on our bank records, as many as Hunter Biden and the crew did, I think they would have hauled us in a long, long, long time ago to have a little discussion about where these millions of dollars are flowing from.
We'd be speaking face to face in another room besides here.
Right. Through a glass cage or, a secured wire window. Yeah, I know.
Well, one of the things to keep in mind is that Biden's due in court July 26th. So this plea deal that people are hearing about, which I find appalling, actually. It still has to be approved by a federal judge. So we'll wait and see what happens there. But I think with what the whistleblowers have come forward with, I would hope that a judge would say, hold on. What are we making a plea deal for? Because a full investigation onto what was actually done has not taken place. I hope that that's what the judge does in the name of justice in America. That doesn't mean that he may end up with a plea deal, but I don't think it'll be the same one if all of these allegations prove to be true. So you have two whistleblowers. One has come forward with their name. The other one wants to remain identified. But they had a call with the IRS chain of command in June of 2020. This is 2023 now. This is June of 2020. And they have said that if normal procedures had been followed, we would have already executed search warrants, had interviews, served document requests, but the chain of command in the IRS said, let's go to DOJ. Now, here's a good quote. Assistant U.S. Attorney Leslie Wolf told investigators, a lot of evidence in our investigation would be found in the guest house of former Vice President Biden, but said there's no way we will get that approved.
Yeah. They have, let me use the appropriate language here, probable cause to believe, based upon evidence, that they could go in and get a search warrant for because they have sufficient information to believe there's documents and information related to the investigation. They have probable cause, and the powers that be, their lords and masters over there, said, no, leave it go, don't go after that data or those documents. That's effectively what happened.
Yep. Yep.
How is
the whistleblower said that it was constantly put on the back burner as the 2020 presidential election approached.
Right.
And
well, maybe politics had something to do with the investigation being slow walked, Congressman.
Exactly. The most substantive things, the felony charges, were left off the table. So there is so much. You've got the Hunter Biden and his WhatsApp message, all of those things where he's telling the Chinese, Henry Zhao, a CCP official, give me the money by tonight. He's received money from Ukraine, China, Romania.
For what is the other question that hasn't been answered? He's dumb as a post. I mean, you might say, well, if I went to law school or what? I don't care. I went to law school with some idiots, I mean, this doesn't mean the guy's got professional credentials in the oil and gas industry. Why in the hell is some oligarch's wife from the mayor? What city was that? He got a diamond worth like $100,000 or something from somebody. What was the purpose and reason for that? Did he report that on his income that year? Doubtful. I mean, there's nothing here. There's no, and let me just put it this way. Nobody in the administration, this current administration, has stepped forward. Joe Biden, people who speak on his behalf, his behind-the-scenes puppet masters and writers, has ever uttered a syllable explaining exactly what it is Hunter Biden had by way of knowledge, expertise, or otherwise brought anything to the table to get all these millions of dollars except access to Joe Biden. That seems to be the only thing that guy has to his name and credit that could benefit him financially.
At some point, someone's got to admit who the big guy is. And we certainly know who Dad is.
Yeah.
And when you see that WhatsApp message, it's very clear. My dad is sitting right here. My dad. Now, I don't know if Joe's going to say he was there.
See, exactly. Again, the silence is deafening.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like the question the other day, does the cocaine belong to you or Hunter Biden? Was basically what a press reporter asked of the deputy assistant press secretary. His response is the Hatch Act. I can't answer that. Are you out of your mind? We're talking about a controlled substance in the White House, and they're not going on record to say, hell no, it's not the president's or its son. Wouldn't that be your response if you know your hands are clean? And the Hatch Act doesn't even apply. Again, we got a lot of red flags waving around here and very little accountability. Pause. We're going to continue with Congressman Wenstrup. We're going to see where we are on the COVID origins, among others, other topics. A couple more segments. I hope you can stick around for those. Should be fun. You've found out most recently.
Yeah, serving on the Intelligence Committee for the last 3 years since the pandemic started. I was interested in the science of the pandemic, what the virus does, how do we treat it, those types of things. But we started finding some interesting things, and the debate raged about whether this came from nature, naturally, or if it was produced in a lab. With that, we start digging in and start hearing from different people and hear what people within the government or assisting the government might have to say. And Dr. Christian Anderson is one of those people. And as we go into people's certain emails and their text messages, where we find out new names. One, for example, is Dr. Morens, and we have emails from Dr. Morens. He's a senior advisor to Dr. Fauci, and he served as Fauci's senior scientific advisor. And very interesting, some of the things that he has had to say. And so very quickly within his emails, I'll give you just a few quotes here. He said, I always try to communicate on Gmail because NIH, National Institutes of Health email, is FOIA'd constantly.
Freedom of Information Act, yeah.
He's trying to push things aside, push it down, not let people hear what they're actually saying in this, the government of the people, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So FOIA is there for a reason. He doesn't want to use it because he doesn't want people hearing what he has to say.
I guess, I'm from a lawyer's perspective, and I don't have the FOIA law in front of me, though. But if that activity, if that email on the Google email system, as opposed to the appropriate NIH communication channels that he was worried about being subject to a FOIA disclosure, if he's doing the work of the people on a separate system, that would still be subject to disclosure because it is within the purview of the FOIA request, government work.
Right.
So I think it's a false notion for him to claim he could hide behind that. But here you have evidence that he is at least trying to do it.
Yeah. And so that's the concern here. So he's someone we're going to hear more from. But he also said, I will delete anything I don't want to see in the New York Times. If you're operating with honesty and integrity, why do you care if the New York Times gets it? So, and it's just odd. And he says, Tony doesn't want his fingerprints on origin stories. Explain that one for us, would you? So, and he also
haul him in?
Well, yeah, but these are new findings. In other words, you overturn one stone, and now you realize you got another stone to turn over.
That's the beautiful thing about discovery. That's why let's make litigation so expensive. That's exactly what happened. You submit your document request, your interrogatories, you get answers back. That leads to a dozen, maybe 200 more questions. Those questions go out into the world. They come back with responses, and then you're like, oh, my God, where did this guy's name come from on this document over here? Then you got to go down that road. So it's just one thing after another, accumulating the data and information.
If you have one spokesperson that you suspect of a cover-up, then you would dig into what they have to say. And when you dig into what they have to say, you realize how many more people they're talking to and that seem to be participating. And and I'm assuming that in these emails, Dr. Morens is addressing those that think that the origins of COVID are from a lab, which are many, very, very educated people
by now.
And he said, and this is a comment, I assume he's referring to those people. He says, don't rule out suing these for slander. People can fill in the blanks.
Yes. FCC non-compliant term for your butt.
So we also found out that Dr. Christian Andersen, who was the person that in 2020 immediately says to Dr. Fauci through his FOIA emails, this thing looks engineered. And then a week later, 4 people write this article called Proximal Origins that say, no, came from nature. Nothing to be seen here, apparently.
How in the hell would they possibly be able to conclude that a week after the fact?
Within
a month of the thing popping up, or even if you go all the way back to the first cases in October over in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Isn't that where the first cases were found?
Well, Wuhan for sure.
Right. So, I mean, along the lines of what you're saying here, to figure out where it came from requires probably months worth of diligent investigation. And that is if everyone's cooperating. You're going to try to get information from the Chinese Communist Party or the actual scientists at the Wuhan Institute. They're probably over there doing a shredding party.
So 4 or 5 days, a week or whatever of conference calls and emails going back and forth is not a scientific study.
No.
Also, we found out in talking to Dr. Andersen, he was using another communication device. We subpoenaed those messages from something called Slack messages, which I had never heard of. And we did get those, or at least what seems to be all of them. We're going through them right now. And I can just tell you that there's some very interesting comments being made within those messages.
Keep your popcorn out. Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Well, I'll be happy when this thing comes to a head. I think we're entitled as Americans to get to the bottom of all this. And at least you guys are looking into it. If the election had gone a different way and the House was not controlled by Republicans, none of this would have come out.
You wouldn't know any of it.
Not a thing. 745, 55 KRCD Talk Station. One more with Congressman Wenstrup. We talked earlier about with the segue from Dave Hatter and TikTok and the Chinese vacuuming up all this information, the silence from the Biden administration on even using this kind of thing, which is really strange considering how dangerous it is to American security. But also, COVID springing from your origins group and investigating into that. We kind of figured out that we are really dependent on China to the extent that people's minds were almost blown. Like for example, when it was determined, or when it was learned by most Americans, something you probably knew ahead of time, that almost 100% of our pharmaceuticals have some connection with China, either directly or through some other channel where component ingredients go to India, where India companies manufacture it, and we buy the pharmaceutical from India. That's still dependence on China. Most of the stuff, it's 100% dependent on China. We learned that with personal protective equipment and everything else. Our own military is dependent on pharmaceuticals from China. That was the subject of, or at least part of the subject of your op-ed piece, Congress. Did we learn anything? Are we moving away from that? Or are we still stuck?
Well, there's some of us that have been crying for this for the last 3 years. And I will say, when you look at dependence, one thing that was a positive is recognizing how important it is for us to be able to domestically produce chips. We can debate the bill that allowed Intel to come to Ohio. This is good for Ohio, don't get me wrong. I might debate the nuances of the bill, which is one of the reasons I voted against it. I'm very much for the premise. We have got to have domestic products made here, wholly here, though. That's the problem.
Well, Holy's problem, you got a multi-billion-dollar company that we have to subsidize the building of a plant so they can continue to make billions of dollars. Sorry, that's like me paying to build Paul Brown Stadium. I don't like any part of that.
Well, let's go to stick with China because
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that was my reason for voting against it. I'm for the premise of bringing things back domestically, and how we go about that is something we need to continue to debate.
Reduce the regulatory burden.
That's a big part. That's a big part of it. Quicker approvals, but also allow mining, doing things like that we can bring back to the United States. So right now, China is making a move to limit exports on a couple key minerals, gallium and germanium. Forget what they may be going into, but these restrictions have an effect on this, and this limiting these key minerals. That's the canary in the coal mine. Right there.
And they did it with a metaphorical middle finger raise when they did it, too.
Of course.
They said, this is a little bit of what's coming your way if you increase your decoupling strategy. Yeah, you still want lithium? You still want... Wait, we got a lock on that market. We're the ones that are digging it up all across this globe of yours. We're the ones with the contracts. U.S., you don't dig it yourself, you buy it from us. How about we just don't sell it to you anymore?
Hey, U.S., have fun with this because you're not even harvesting your own natural resources within your own country for some environmental reason that's supposedly going to protect the earth, yet we're part of the earth, and we're going about it all over the earth.
Yeah.
So, but we can't even produce the rare earth minerals needed for our military and for pharmaceutical ingredients that we need for our medicines. This is a national security risk.
Huge.
This is a national health security risk. We need a healthy America. We need a healthy America in order to be a deterrent and for war and other economic conditions. And we have lost that. And it's really taken, our country's done this over a long period of time. So it's not just one administration, right? We have allowed ourselves to become dependent on China.
Yes,
and that's why I said this 4th of July, we're not a dependent nation. We can celebrate the premise of it. We were certainly more independent, I think, on the 4th of July in 1776, when we hadn't even won the war yet, than we may be now. Only now it's in the form of a Cold War, and we seem to be losing. And we're doing things, Brian, like these green energy tax incentives. Former U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra, who used to chair the Intelligence Committee, has said that these projects are being developed with the involvement of Chinese companies. This is crazy. And we've got to come back to the United States of America. We don't have the FDA in these labs in a vigilant fashion to make sure that the drugs are of high quality, that they're safe. That's just another component of this problem.
Oh, yeah. We found out, what was it, heparin or something like that, being manufactured in open vats of pig blood out in the middle of the environment in China. And
250 Americans died.
250 Americans died. That's because we relied on China. They don't have OSHA. They don't have product safety rules there. They don't have child labor laws there. They don't have anything like we've got here.
If they cut us off, and you brought up how they supply India, so maybe the drug comes from India, but who's supplying India? And even our own generic manufacturers here in the United States are at least now, and there's only a couple. Mark Cuban's going to build another one. They're trying to at least get the active pharmaceutical ingredients from our allies, at least, but we've got to get back to the United States. But you go back a few years, and COVID really brought it out, and it should have opened America's eyes. When I was in Iraq, I relied on an adversary for my protective equipment as a surgeon and the drugs that I was using, but it's not just those things. It's so many things. Frankly, Brian, I don't care if China's making the toys that my kids buy at Walmart. That's not as important to me. But when it comes to, and that can be part of our trade balance, but when it comes to our national security and our health, we are in a situation right now that's extremely dangerous, not just for us, but for our allies all around the world.
Well, and you say we're in a Cold War. I think of cyber war and the attacks that have been launched by Chinese Communist Party-controlled companies, as well as others out in our evil forces in the world, they launch those real time. I mean, it isn't a bomb being dropped, but it can be as economically damaging. If they shut down our power grid, that is not, a bomb blowing up. It's not 9/11, but it would be far more devastating. So there's war, and there's methodologies that people engage in warfare. And I would say we're closer to a hot war, given these real time problems that we're facing via the satellite or via the internet and social media and the like, than we are in a Cold War. Congressman Brad Wenstrup, my opinion, not yours necessarily. I appreciate the time you spent with my listeners and me today. You're always welcome in the studio. Keep up the great work. And I got my popcorn out on your conclusions in terms of the COVID-19 origin panel, and looking forward to seeing more details pop out on that one.
Yeah, we just keep on digging.
Keep on digging until it's done.